Hey, North Shore Pump, are you concerned about the value of your home given everything that's going on in the economic climate right now? We're going to cover that today in your June 2025 housing market update. What is going on, party people? In this video today, we're going to be covering what's happening not only in the national housing market, but what's happening in our very own backyard, North Shore Pump, and our local housing market. Let's jump right into it. I shared this stat last month, but a recent study or survey rather done by Clever Real Estate revealed that 70% of Americans are concerned about a potential housing market crash in 2025. You may be one of those 70%. Additionally, when they did a survey, they found that 32% of folks that were planning a major purchase in 2025 said that they are now delaying that with concern about the economy. Folks that were planning on buying a house or car, anything major, which is very, very interesting. And if you're one of those folks, throw it in the comments below. What's interesting though, with regard to the housing market, is we have very smart people that study it on a national and local basis. And Business Insider recently came out with a quote that said, economists who study housing market conditions generally do not expect a crash in 2025 or beyond. So here's what's interesting. While inventory, amount of homes that are coming onto the market is up 30% year over year nationally, we are still down 16% from pre-pandemic levels of inventory. Even though we're seeing more homes hit the market than we have seen in the last couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years, we're still not back to where we were from a pre-pandemic point. And as you can see in the graphic in our very own North Shore Pump, the graphic really tells it all. If we look at the inventory going back 10 years, we simply saw just a bottoming out of the amount of inventory that hit the market, and we're still not quite back up to quote unquote normal levels. So it's simple econ 101. You could have gone to public school and figured this out. There's simply not enough supply of homes for prices to crash. All right, now on a national scale, we are seeing home price growth on a national scale somewhat moderate, somewhat taper out. As you can see in the graphic, in February of 2024, we had 7% year over year price growth, whereas in February of 25, that's down to 3.9% year over year price growth. And our very own North Shore Pump, we are seeing somewhat of a similar trend. Our median price this past month was $700,000, which is still a crazy number, but that was only up 0.9% year over year from this time last year. So we are definitely seeing where prices are somewhat moderating, not going down, but moderating in North Shore Pump. So now that we talked about prices, let's talk about mortgage rates. So there's definitely been volatility lately. However, rates have been somewhat stubborn in the high sixes really since the beginning of 2024. Over the last couple months, we've fluctuated from anywhere from about like 6.75 to maybe 7.1, but we've been kind of stuck there. And one of the largest contributing factors to that is the Federal Reserve has been reluctant to cut the federal funding rate, even with pressure from the White House, which is a huge contributing factor to mortgage rates. Now, the reason for this is the Federal Reserve has a dual mandate from Congress. Their dual mandate is to maximize employment and to create stable prices for the American public. Regarding employment, so unemployment numbers have remained relatively the same, around 4%. So without any spike in unemployment, the Federal Reserve really isn't, there's nothing really happening with employment that would cause the Federal Reserve to want to make any moves necessarily, would cause them to lower rates to kind of rev up the financial engine. And then with regard to prices, inflation has been somewhat stubborn and still remains slightly above the Federal Reserve's target 2% inflation rate. So, you figure with employment being somewhat stable, inflation being somewhat stubborn, the Federal Reserve really just isn't incentivized to cut the federal funding rate, which is really why they haven't. And that's a large contributing factor to mortgage rates staying where they are at. All that being said, the consensus among all the smarty pants folks that predict mortgage rates is that we will see mortgage rates kind of tick down a little bit, inch down over the next 18 months. But even experts are predicting that we're not going to get into the fives even by the end of 2026. I think we are going to be in this environment for a little while longer where we're going to see rates anywhere between 6 and 7% once again through the end of 2026. All right, so what does this all mean to you? So for my sellers and my would-be sellers, first and foremost, the getting is still good, right? We're still in a place where prices have not depreciated, where homes are still selling relatively quickly at really still record prices. So we are still seeing most homes are selling very quickly, and some homes are selling for above the asking price with multiple offers. So by and large, the getting is still good. Secondly, multiple offers are not a given anymore in our greater Richmond market or in our local market. So we're definitely still seeing those on some properties, but it's not every single property like it was during COVID. So just know that if you're planning on putting your home on the market, multiple offers are not a given. Last but certainly not least, and this kind of ties into it, is presentation equals price. And what I mean by that is the homes that we see that are still getting great prices, that are still doing well, that are getting multiple offers and selling above the asking prices are the homes homes that present well. So all of the things, getting your home ready, making sure the paint looks good, making sure the furniture is staged appropriately, making sure the flooring is in good shape, and just kind of generally that your property shows well, those things have always been important, but they're all the more important now if you are somebody that says, hey, Chris, I want to maximize the price that I actually get for my home. For my buyers, if you're waiting for rates to drop, I hope you have packed a lunch. As you can see, all the smart folks are predicting that we're really not going to see rates make any drastic changes over the next 18 months. So if you're somebody that's been sitting on the sidelines waiting to buy, yes, you might be able to get a slightly cheaper interest rate at some point in the future, but realize you are potentially going to be buying at a higher price, which may or may not offset the cost savings of your lower interest rate. Secondly, your first home is usually not your last home. So I've talked to a lot of would-be first-time home buyers. Maybe you have a relative, a son, a daughter that's considering buying their first home. Realize that first home is probably not going to be their last home, right? Which you may know. Sometimes we have to remind our younger buyers of like, hey, your first home may not have everything that you've ever wanted it to be, but it's more important to get into the game, get into a house, start building some equity, stop paying off somebody else's mortgage and pay your own, and then eventually trade up in 5 to 10 years into your quote unquote dream home, or keep that home as a potential rental property for yourself. And then last but not least, rent your rate out. So I've talked to a number of folks that are reluctant to give up their mortgage rate that they locked in during COVID. You know, they're in a 2, 3, 4% interest rate and they just don't want to give that up, and understandably so. That's really good long-term debt to have. So I've encouraged a bunch of those folks, hey, let's keep the home and just turn it into a rental property and then go buy the next home that actually meets your needs, as opposed to just staying in the house that you're currently in. Realize that you can turn that into a rental and keep that in your portfolio and allow that to build your wealth as time goes on and keep that long-term debt in place. So guys, I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, concerns we did not address, throw in the comments, shoot me a DM. If we can earn your real estate business, we would love to. Call, text, email to see if we can help. Thanks for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you guys next month.